Why do we build the wall? My children, why do we build the wall?
Why do we build the wall? We build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free.
How does a wall keep us free? My children, how does a wall keep us free?
How does the wall keep us free? The wall keeps out the enemy. We build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free.
Who do we call the enemy? My children, who do we call the enemy?
Who do we call the enemy? The enemy is poverty, and the wall keeps out the enemy. And we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free.
Because we have and they have not. My children, because they want what we have got.
Because we have and they have not, because they want what we have got. The enemy is poverty, and the wall keeps out the enemy. And we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free.
What do we have that they should want? My children, what do we have that they should want?
What do we have that they should want? We have a wall to work upon. We have work and they have none.
And our work is never done, my children, and the war is never won. The enemy is poverty, and the wall keeps out the enemy. And we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free.
We build the wall to keep us free. Hello and welcome to Raise a Glass, the podcast where we discuss the stories and storytellers that have shaped us. I am Hunter Danson.
And I am Eric Lintola.
Also known as Hades, in the cover of Why We Build the Wall from Hadestown, which you have just listened to. And we have not, because we have not actually recorded it yet.
We may not have recorded it, but I have definitely already tried to sing it. And you might hear the pain in my voice from singing as Hades, especially at the end of that song. It is very hard to sing with the emotion.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get into this later, but the what's the right word? It's not anger. It's not even wrath. It's something more. It's like,
self-righteousness.
Yeah, and the vitriol with which he ends it is just
right.
It hits you to the core.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing a face like a, but Ugh. Okay, well, we'll get into that. Okay. Whew.
Yeah.
What an entrance.
Yes. Hadestown. I am so excited. I have wanted to do a Hadestown for like the first time I listened to Hadestown. I wanted to do it even before I had a podcast. I wanted to have a podcast about Hadestown. Yeah.
You were bringing us up to me, what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? More than that.
Was it that long ago?
When did it come up? I don't even know when it came out. 2019. You were bringing up to me I remember in early pandemic time.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oof. That time. But before we get into that,
right?
Before we continue that aspect of our conversation, Hunter, what is in your glass?
I have whole milk, and I have a frozen thin mint.
Okay.
To dip in my whole milk. How about you?
Well, I just wanted to share on that. We had a friend that was sharing their favorite Girl Scout cookie is the Samoa, of course, because it's the best. Unless they have frozen Thin Mints on hand.
Oh.
Specifically Thin Mints when they're frozen. I don't know if it's extra crunch or the...
Yeah, no, they're more crunchy. They seem to have more flavor. It's kind of reminiscent of like an ice cream cookie, but it's not. It's a Thin Mint. But in my opinion, it's like a Thin Mint squared.
Okay,
when you freeze it.
1 times 1, so it's equal to a Thin Mint. 1 Thin Mint squared is still 1 Thin Mint.
It's exponentially better.
So
if you take the factor of the Thin Mint's deliciousness, when you freeze the Thin Mint, it squares the factor of the Thin Mint's deliciousness.
But the factor of the Thin Mint's deliciousness would just be 1 unit of that. So squaring it would still be 1 unit of deliciousness.
Yeah. So I wouldn't start with 1, though. You could start with a different number.
You'd start with a tag along.
It's exponentially better. Someone calculate the mathematical value of a Thin Mint. And its deliciousness.
And its deliciousness.
Yeah. 2 separate. What's in your glass, Eric?
This is the podcast of 2 sleep-deprived dads.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So my glass tonight is a combination of the needed soothing of my voice from my first attempt at Hades combined with a little Hades himself. So I have a hot toddy, orange juice. The honey is, I think it's a wildflower honey. And instead of a regular rum or bourbon, I have a fire whiskey.
Oh, wow.
Evan Williams fire whiskey. So that was my attempt at adding a little Hades into the mix.
Nice.
That is significantly better than I thought it would be.
It's like a Hades mimosa. Wait, no, it's orange juice.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a Hades. It's a hot Hades town. Hot Hades. Nope. Not that.
No.
It's Hades toddies. I'm just going to call it a Hades town. How about that? It's a Hades town.
It's a Hades town. Official.
Keep your head low.
Well, are you, before we get into Hadestown, are you raising your Hadestown or pouring out your Hadestown for anything this week?
Actually, my raising and lowering are directly tied this week. So we had absolutely beautiful weather here this weekend. Like, it was stunning. Went for walks, played outside. I got to begin my garden, planting some frost-resistant seeds. We've got tulips that are showing up in the ground. We got hyacinths. We've got Lenten roses. There's a botanical name for them. I can't remember. And more and more and more. And it's just beautiful. I love the what are those trees called? Oh, there are some beautiful trees in bloom. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful weekend for weather. And then fast forward to today, and it was snowing and is snowing. And Hunter, I would like to tell you two pieces that I am lowering a glass, pouring one out for. There it is. Because of that. The first is allergies. And oh my goodness, my body is just like has no idea what to do right now. Like, it doesn't know what to do. It's terrible. And so because of that, I've been trying to take some allergy medicine. And this is the second part. And I was taking it the last couple of days, and not today, but the 2 days beforehand, I was taking one, and I was talking to my wife afterwards. It's like, yeah, I was kind of tired throughout the day. And it didn't seem to really be doing much. She's like, were you taking them from? And she named the specific thing. I was like, yeah. She's like, Eric, that's Benadryl. And I was like, oh. Well, that makes sense as to why I was so sleepy. It's like I couldn't stay awake. Which made work really hard. And so I took the right one today, and it lasted longer and was better, but still my body's like doesn't know what to do with this weather. So definitely pouring one out for just like, you gave us spring, be spring. Just let it be. Come on, Persephone, just stay up on top of the ground. Stop it, Hades.
Yeah.
Do you need me to sing? La 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 la.
In harmony and rhythm.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Hades and Orpheus.
Strengths in my Hadestown. Feel better now. You might have heard some of those higher notes were harder for me.
Yeah.
Hunter, how about you?
Well, I'm going to try and keep mine brief because we got to get into this. But I do actually have two things to raise a glass to match your two that you poured one out for. One is Solus OS. The ship has been righted. It's a nautically themed, a lot of nautically themed branding on it, but a couple people came back and there's been an announcement about the future of it and a plan for the infrastructure and everything. So it's pretty exciting news for me and other people too. But I'm also raising a glass to Jim Henson because he has invaded my life on two fronts. One is my son has gotten into the show Dinosaur Train. which I don't know if you have ever heard. Dinosaur Train.
not.
Dinosaur
I've not.
Train. Yeah. T-Rex. I'm a Tyrannosaurus. I'm the biggest carnivore in the Cretaceous forest. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a Jim Henson thing. I guess he didn't do all of it, but it's not really puppets. It's animated. It was like an animated PBS Kids show.
Okay.
And it's all right. It's very silly, but it's teaches you about dinosaurs, and he's really enjoying it. And the other is I just started watching The Dark Crystal. I've watched the 2 episodes, and I have absolutely loved them. Just gorgeous sets and character design. I did see the original movie way back when.
Okay.
But The Dark Crystal is just, it's like so whimsical. And yet it's also like so epic and like, serious fantasy too. And it really kind of captures that feeling. And I recommended it to you, Eric, because it was a similar feeling from like reading Wheel of Time, where it's like very, it's like fun and whimsical, but it's also serious. But it's great stuff. I really like it. And there's like a really great voice cast. Mark Hamill's in there, Benedict Wong, Anya Taylor-Joy. Like a pretty star-studded cast.
Yeah, those are big deals.
Yeah, so Jim Henson. And I'm pouring one out for just the not Parenthood, because Parenthood is wonderful, but the exhaustion of being a parent. One of the side effects is just sometimes I just sit around at like 2:30 and stare into space. I just don't want to get up and do anything. But when you have a toddler, he's always moving, and now we have a newborn too to take care of. So it's it's a lot of energy that is being extracted, but it is worth it. So
yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, yeah.
So Hadestown.
Actually, before we continue, I need to go get my playbill. I'll be right back.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I forgot to grab that before we began. Why do we build the wall? My children. Why do we build the wall? That is a less good version of what you heard earlier.
Yeah.
It's a preview to past attractions.
Yes, it is. So we'll start this up. You saw Hadestown live.
I saw Hadestown live. Yes, I did. It was a joy. I saw it on Friday, March 17th. I think that was was March 17th a Friday?
I don't know.
Now we're looking. Friday, March 17th at 8 p.m. at the Auditorium Theater, Rochester, New York. And oh my goodness, Hunter. Oh my goodness. Let's just say it was so good that our friend who came up to watch it with us, who's bigger musical fan and show fan than I am, that we are together, Hunter. You've met Trishelle. She's one of the coolest people ever. Mm-hmm. She already had seen the show, maybe not live, but she'd seen it at some point, somehow. And she enjoyed it so much that she went back 2 days later to watch it again. And I couldn't, but I understood her. I would have. It was so good. I mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I am jealous. Although hopefully this summer we might get to see it on Broadway. So.
Ooh, oh, that would be amazing. So not only did I see it, but you saw the picture of where I was sitting.
Yeah.
It was a very unique situation. So we upgraded our tickets. We were in, I think, the third row of the orchestra, but on the far side. So I could see 2/3 of the stage. But what I could see incredibly clearly. And so there are certain scenes in the show where some of the actors walked right towards me. And we're like, we could see their spit.
Oh, wow.
And like we were making eye contact with them. And then there were other major pieces, like where the train shows up, that I just couldn't see because of where I was sitting. I was sitting at the very end of the aisle too. But if they didn't have mics, we still would have been able to hear the entire show.
Yeah.
And there are so many things that I'll bring up from the show that I saw live, probably throughout our conversation. Two pieces that I want to bring up now before we dive into what is Hadestown about. The first, and this is always the first thing I pay attention to in a show, as a musician who loves playing in pit orchestras more than any other musical group, pretty much, is the pit. And usually a pit orchestra is called a pit because it's below the stage. The way the pit works in Hadestown is that the members of the instrumentalists, the musicians, are on stage with the actors. And so they are part of the set. And there are a few shows that do that. And I love whenever a show does that because it just, to me, it makes it clear that there's not a distinction between actors and musicians. And it just worked so well with this show. And you will be glad to hear, as I was glad to experience, that I was sitting in the space where I could directly see the double bass.
Oh, yeah.
And electric bass. So he played in both. It matters a lot to me. So that's the first one. And the second one is a somewhat strange statement. But I fully expect, I don't know how long it takes, but a couple years or so, for this to be a musical that is done in high schools across the country. Because it is so potent. It is so simple in many ways. And the way the set is designed and the actors and the characters are set up allows for a small or a large cast to pull it off for a high school. And for a diversity of voices, which I find that somewhat unique because it's not just huge over the top. Like you could do it with a pretty simple set design.
Yeah.
So those are the couple things I want to say. We will talk. We will bring up more. Yeah.
I think we should mention what Hadestown is about. Hadestown is a musical written by Aeneas Mitchell. It's based on the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, which is a sad tale, a tale of love from long ago. And it was written long ago. So don't ask why. Don't ask why it ends the way it does, what happens. Spoilers, I mean, it's a pretty old myth, old Greek myth. So
yeah, it's a Greek tragedy.
Orpheus is he's the son of a muse. So he has musical gifts. He's a poet. He's an artist, and he falls in love with Eurydice, who in Hadestown is a hungry young girl, and Eurydice is a young girl. I don't think there's too much known about her. My wife might correct me later. Yeah, but Eurydice dies. In some versions of the myth, she is bitten by a rattlesnake on her wedding day.
She gone.
Yeah, hence the title of the song, Songbird versus Rattlesnake, in Hadestown is a reference to that.
What?
Yeah. And yeah, other ones she just dies. It doesn't really say how. The important thing is that she dies, and Orpheus goes to the underworld to get her back. And he makes it to the underworld.
I'm coming soon.
Yes. Yeah, and he makes it, and Hades says that he'll let him go, let him and Eurydice leave. But if she has to walk behind him, she can't hold his hand. And if he looks back, then Eurydice has to stay in the underworld forever.
If he looks back before they both exit.
Yeah, and Orpheus looks back, and Eurydice has to stay there.
The step before he walks into
in the musical
underworld.
Yeah,
in the show, isn't it in the tragedy pretty soon?
I'm not sure. I think it might depend on the version, but
yeah,
he looks back, and Eurydice stays there, and that's the tragedy, and that's the end, really. There are versions where Orpheus, well, he doesn't have a happy life, obviously, because he has to live with the mistake that he's made. But he also sings, in one version, I think he sings a lot of sad songs, and the Maenads, who are sort of what we know about them comes down through, I don't know exactly which scholar, but these women followers of Bacchus, and according to the the source, which was probably written by a man, these women followers of Bacchus, or the Maenads, go into a Bacchic frenzy, and they they're in one of these Bacchic frenzies. Bacchus is the god of wine and merrymaking and probably all sorts of other stuff too. But they find Orpheus when they're in one of these Bacchic frenzies, and they want him to play some happy music and some songs, and he says, "No, I can't." And they rip into pieces.
Oh.
So, Orpheus might end up in the underworld after that, but I don't know. So it just kind of ends. And so that's the myth. And Aeneas Mitchell tells the story of Orpheus and Eurydice against a backdrop of kind of like a Depression era United States, and uses the language of the Depression, and adds in, Hades. The Greeks wouldn't think of it as the hell that we think of. It was very different. But Aeneas Mitchell uses that mythology and weaves it into the lyrics and the show, to have Hades, the god of the underworld, makes a deal with Orpheus, kind of like, the devil making a deal with the devil, and Orpheus signs a contract when they go out. And
there's so many things.
Yeah.
There's so many levels of the show that you're hitting. It's amazing. It's amazing. Continue.
Yeah. That's kind of the introduction to Hadestown. And I would recommend, if you're interested, you don't want to have the whole thing spoiled, and you don't want to listen to the rest of our 2-hour podcast or something, and you just want to experience the show, like obviously the original Broadway cast recording, but they also did a NPR Tiny Desk concert on YouTube, which is wonderful because you can see all the cast and you see them interacting and stuff, and they kind of introduce some of the songs. And there's a Tony Awards performance of Wait for Me that's pretty good. that can give you, they kind of have a little bit before that sets up the story. That's an intro. But honestly, I would just listen to the Broadway cast recording because it's
I will say
fantastic.
that I don't think you can have the show ruined for you. I really don't think you can, because it's clear from the very beginning of the show that it's a tragedy, and the story is what you just told.
Yeah.
And it doesn't ruin. I think it helps, actually. This might be one of the types of things where knowing that it's a tragedy helps. And please, oh please, if you are listening to the recording of Hadestown, especially if it's one of your first few listens, don't listen to it on shuffle.
Why would you do?
Don't.
Musical on shuffle.
Just listen to it straight through, and then maybe eventually, if you want to throw it a shuffle just to have some fun with it, go for that.
Shuffle.
But this is. As a person who shuffles albums, I would say never shuffle an album before you first listen to it all the way through. And the musical just doesn't work.
Yeah, why would you?
And set aside time so it's the only thing you're listening to. So the runtime of this musical and songs is 2 hours and 2 minutes. It is very similar to Hamilton in that it is mostly sung. Hamilton is 99% sung. Hadestown is probably 90, 95.
Yeah, I've never seen it, so.
Yeah, the show itself is maybe 2.5 hours tops.
I did see the bootleg. And there's a
you didn't see anything.
Yeah.
You may or may not have seen.
But I would recommend listening to the Broadway recording before you listen to the bootleg, because the sound is really low quality and it's like a phone in a bag. So
it's just, when it comes to your area, go see it. It is not my favorite musical. One day we'll hopefully do Come From Away, which is, I think, it's my favorite musical. It's not the musical I've seen the most times, even though I've now seen it twice. But anyways, Hadestown, it's a musical you will feel. You'll feel it. And I have to be honest, one of the reasons we did Why Do We Build the Wall? Or Why We Build the Wall is because I think I've clarified to Hunter how much of a fanboy I am of Hades.
Patrick Page.
Oh,
is the singer.
So he's a singer. So Patrick Page is a singer of the original cast recording. I had the chance to listen to Matthew Patrick Quinn sing it. Hunter, I'm showing you his picture right here. It's the middle guy.
Okay.
He's like this. He's like 6'3", and he just commanded the stage. And Hades sings with a bass voice, not like a baritone, like a true bass voice, which is why my voice doesn't really give it full justice. I can do some of it, but not quite. And I believe that just like every room has its resonating frequency, so do souls. So if you're ever in a bathroom and you go, you can find that sound where everything starts rattling, goes. Maybe it's just me that does that. I don't do it with other people around because that would ruin people, dampen sound. I think that a true bass voice finds a resonating frequency in people's souls. So there are points when he sings, when I was hearing Matthew Patrick Quinn sing, and the original recording as well. Yes, definitely that with Patrick Page. That my body was just like. Melanie was like, "Yo, like I think you might leave me for Hades." I was like, "No, I would never do that. He would never want me." He'd probably talk instead of singing all the time. So, Did you feel that way as well? Do you feel that way?
I felt that way about Andre DeShields. That man, he plays Hermes in the original Broadway cast. He just, for me, he is the one true Hermes of Hadestown. Like, he just brings so much class and so much just like a sense of history, and he ties just, I don't know, he's the one and only Andre DeShields.
Sorry, I just was looking him up just as a
like he's he doesn't have a classically good singing voice, but he has kind of like a jazz voice, which works so well with Hadestown.
And this show is jazz. It is gospel. It is like
New Orleans
folk
jazz.
What did you say?
Like New Orleans funeral march,
dirge. You know,
dirge.
It opens with a trombone.
Yeah,
that was a terrible rendition of it. And the show, it doesn't just open with the sound of the trombone player. The trombone player is actually in the middle of the stage, playing it. And there are 2 points in the show where the trombone player isn't just sitting on the stage as one of the member of the pit, but actually walks to the front and opens the show. And for our show, and actually during the musical itself, there is a point where Persephone calls out the names of the musicians.
Oh yeah,
which is amazing.
Crack in the wall, breaking the fourth wall with the line. There's a crack in the wall.
So amazing. Emily Fredrickson played the trombone and glockenspiel in our recording. And when I saw it, there was a female trombone player, and it was amazing. One of my goals in life is to have a daughter solely so that I can raise a female bass player and or musician.
Wow.
Because there aren't enough. Honestly, especially playing the instruments that actually matter. The bass. A lot of the lower tone instruments.
What instruments don't matter? Or maybe we shouldn't get into that. Don't want to make enemies. Who's the flautist?
Anyways.
Sorry.
I played in a flute choir before. Did I tell you that?
Really?
I played the double bass in a flute choir. It was like 7 flautists and me. Play the bass and you can play anything. I played in a flute choir.
Yeah.
With the bass. She was, yeah. Okay. Hunter. Let us talk about some of the different roles in this show. Because I was unclear to me when I was listening through the show, kind of what was happening. And I will say that this is my own terminology for this. I think when it comes to, whenever I hear people sing for a musical, I am voice blind. And by that, I mean, I do not mean that I can't tell a good voice. I have a lot of musical experience. What I do mean is that I cannot tell voices apart. So this happened to me with Hamilton, the musical. Loved the music, continually loved it. Right, I listened to it so many times, and then I watched it, and I was like, "Oh, that's when Aaron Burr is singing. That's when Hamilton is singing. Clearly different voices, clearly different actors, clearly different roles." But it wasn't until I visually saw them that I was able to parse in my mind when I was listening to them without seeing them who was doing what. And because it's challenging with shows that are primarily singing, you don't get the same chance to almost hear the relationships develop, because it's just done through song. And it's just a different, like, sometimes dialogue is a lot more helpful to be like, oh, okay, that's what distinguishes these characters. And so that matters with this show because there are two different love stories that are happening in this show. I came into it just thinking about Eurydice and Orpheus, like that was the primary relationship in this show. But that's not. I mean, it's maybe slightly more important.
It's the one that drives the plot.
Yeah, but is it? I don't know if it's ultimately more important. Yeah, it drives the plot. The other one is Persephone and Hades, which is what causes the conflict and necessitates the show.
Yeah.
And in addition to those four, there are only three other characters or groups of characters. There's Hermes, who we've already mentioned. There are the Fates, who are a combination of three, at least in the recording, what I experienced with three women who sing together, who we can talk about the Fates in just a moment. And then the last is the chorus. Those are the only characters in the whole show. And the chorus does everything. Like, this is a show where the chorus has as much, if not more work than any of the other characters.
Yeah. The hardest working chorus in the God's almighty world.
The God.
Yeah.
Hunter, can you tell us about the Fates?
Yeah, so the Fates, they're Anais Mitchell in the NPR Tiny Desk video. She called them like the voices in the back of your head, and Hermes says they're always singing in the back of your mind. In lyrics, they're kind of personified as three women in the show, and they come in at certain points to push characters towards certain decisions. So when Orpheus is walking through the underworld, they are the voice of doubt. They ask him, who are you? Who are you to lead her, who's Eurydice? Who are you to lead the people that were trapped in the underground out? And when Hades is trying to decide what to do with Orpheus, the Fates are also present there. And they give him the advice, give a man a rope and he'll hang himself. And so that's how Hades resolves this deal, because he's in a tight spot, because if he lets Orpheus go, then he'll lose his quote unquote authority in Hadestown, as he'll be seen as a weak king. If he makes him stay, he'll be seen as a cruel king, because Orpheus's song does change Hades' heart and sort of, so they help him come up with that solution to Orpheus. So they're sort of, they're the voices in the back of your mind. And like one of my favorite lines in the song of all time is spoken by Hermes, Andre de Shields, my one true Hermes. And it's at the beginning of Wait For Me Reprise, where he says, "The meanest dog you'll ever meet. He ain't the hound dog in the street. He bears some teeth and tears some skin, but brother, that's the worst of him. The dog you really gotta dread is the one that howls inside your mind. It's him whose howling drives men mad, and a mind to its undoing."
Wait for me, I'm coming.
And it's just an epic song.
Honestly, the reprise of Wait For Me is better than the original. I think. I think Wait For Me kind of, it doesn't hit as big as I think it should every time I listen to it. But the reprise hits me more.
I think it's supposed to. I think Wait For Me sets up the reprise.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Usually, when I think of a show though that does reprises, this is like my Sound of Music theory.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, but based off the movie, The Sound of Music. So it's not a music theory statement; it's a Sound of Music theory. That reprises are used because composers ran out of songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And often reprises aren't as good as the original. And you're like, okay, the second act of a show like has maybe more of the plot elements, but like maybe missing on some of the bigger numbers. But that is not the case here, and it's not the case of this reprise at all. And it's not the case of like they have the same song, Epic. Yeah, they call it Epic 1, 2, and 3. It's done 3 times, and each time it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And there is so much repetition in this show. Hermes,
Road to Hell reprise also.
That's true. Way down to Hades. So yeah, there are multiple reprises, and repetition is used by Hermes specifically to emphasize points, and so Orpheus was a young boy, or Eurydice was a hungry young girl. And it just continually is brought up. And every time he brings it up, it's done in a way that's almost reshaping what it means. That is, like, it's so purposely done. And I wish I could think of a great example of it.
Come Home With Me is one example, minor example, I guess. But when Orpheus first sees Eurydice, Andre de Shields says Hermes gives some advice to Orpheus when he wants to go talk to Eurydice, and he's like, Orpheus, don't come on too strong. And then Orpheus goes up to Eurydice and he's like, come home with me. It's like, who are you? The man who's gonna marry you.
He's gonna marry you.
And
his name is like a melody.
Yeah, but then later, when Orpheus arrives in the underworld and he finds Eurydice, he says, come home with me.
Yes.
I have listened to this musical a lot. Over and over and over. Just, I can't get over it. I mean, like, I'll go through periods and listen to it a bunch, and then I'll stop, and then I'll pick it up again, and it'll hit me just as hard. Like, I was listening to it earlier today, making dinner, and I was crying.
Any particular song that gets you?
Wait for Me reprise pretty much always. This time around, I think I was reflecting a lot on Orpheus as a character.
Okay.
Because he's, and why I feel so much affinity for Orpheus. Because, he's kind of awkward. He's a poet. He's sort of, he's very naive, as Hermes says, naive about the ways of the world. Whereas Eurydice is kind of the opposite. She's very worldly wise. And, Hermes at the end, he says Orpheus's gift is, he says he could make you see the way the world could be in spite of the way that it is. And I don't know. Like when I sit down to write, I can't just shut out everything that's going on in the world. And I'm not saying I'm a great artist like Orpheus is. I'm not the son of a muse, but there's always the question of like why, why? What's the point of even writing or singing or doing art? Any of it really. And the point is that there's more and there's hope, and art is a way to express that. And I identify a lot with Orpheus's struggle as someone who's kind of awkward, sometimes kind of an outsider, and spending time doing things that just seem very frivolous to a lot of other people. And yet he is Orpheus. He's the one who sings the song that fixes what's wrong, and yet he's incredibly flawed. He makes this huge mistake that I think speaks to our human nature.
Yeah. I'm not mad at Orpheus. And I think the repetition that's most powerful in this show is the road to hell. Because it's called a reprise in the playbill, but it's not.
Yeah.
It is the same. And maybe I'm just reading the show wrong, and Orpheus makes more mistakes than or more purposeful mistakes than I realize. And I was just reading through a little bit of your essay, which I'm sorry I hadn't read fully before we met.
Okay.
His naivete is what makes him attractive to Eurydice, and what makes him who he is. But it's also way more complex than that, and what you've just been hitting on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, one of the things I discovered when I was writing the essay was how Eurydice kind of quizzes Orpheus. The whole song, the wedding song, Eurydice is quizzing Orpheus on how he's going to provide.
Never tell me if you're able. Who's going to set the wedding table? Times being what they are. Hard and getting harder all the time.
She asks him about the wedding bands, the bed, the table, all these sort of material things. She asks him how Orpheus is going to provide this, because she seems, I guess, kind of intrigued by Orpheus, but he's incredibly naive. And Eurydice is someone who goes with the wind. She, she turns her collar to the wind. She's had a hard life. She knows how hard it can be to survive. And Orpheus is a poet and seems not to know at all how to survive out in the world. And he sort of wins her over by the thing that wins her over is Orpheus showing her his song and providing this proof when he sings la 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 la. The flower,
he pulls out the carnation.
The flower blooms, which I didn't get for a while because I'd only listened to it, and then I saw a recording and I was like, oh, okay. And so she sees this proof of what his song can do, and that's kind of what that's the turning point for her into accepting Orpheus, in spite of herself.
Do you think Eurydice is angry at Orpheus when he turns back?
It's hard to tell. I mean, because there's not much, like you hear that moment in the show is just like the whole thing is building with the music. And when Orpheus looks back, it just stops. and you just hear,
Yep.
and that's like the only reaction you get from
It's you.
Eurydice. At least that's as far as I remember. But
he turns back and says, "It's you."
yeah,
She looks at him and says, "It's me."
yeah,
And then she's closed
Yeah.
out. I couldn't see that. So I could see him, but where I was sitting, I couldn't see that
Yeah.
moment. And I think it took something away from me as I'm experiencing it. Because I didn't feel the same level of tension that I know the scene was conveying
Yeah.
to the room. I almost felt like the tension should have built for another minute.
In the Broadway, she sinks into the floor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a sinking floor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know if I would say she's angry. I think she's just sad. Sorry. The only other thing I remember that you get from Eurydice after that moment is when the Road to Hell reprise sort of turns the corner, and you hear Eurydice say, "Has anybody got a match?"
Mm-hmm.
Which means she's in the underworld and she's looking for a match for some reason.
No, that's how the whole thing. That's how the original Road to Hell starts. It repeats the beginning of the show. She has that at the very beginning of the show too.
Oh,
it's the exact same song. I'm fairly certain it's 100% the same.
I don't know if it's exactly the same, but because they do all the intros for the characters, right? They do everybody meet the fates, and
the original Road to Hell is 12 seconds longer than the reprise. So you're right, there are a couple introduction different pieces, but it is almost the exact same song. That's why I wouldn't consider a reprise as much as a repeat, which I know is kind of what a reprise means. But usually, when you talk about a reprise, you're talking about a different form of the same song versus the same song acted out the same way. And I have to be honest, I saw it at the end, and the whole idea of the show is that maybe it's different this time. We sing it again because maybe it will be different. And that's actually where I just hear a larger statement about the world. We keep going on because maybe this time things will be different. And we can get into what is one of my favorite songs, which I know that... oh my goodness! What is the name of the woman? Aeneas.
Aeneas is how she pronounces it.
Okay, I know that Aeneas Mitchell wrote this song many years before the
Maga.
Yeah, the time of the conversation on the U.S.-Mexico border being what it is now. But this whole show, I think, is asking that question of, will anything really change in our world, in our country? Like the feel you brought up of like the Dust Bowl Depression era people who are directly contrasted by the industrial gleaming that is Hades. And there's this question of, we're going to keep doing it, but is going to be different. I just think about that question of, or that statement of, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
And this question of, will the future change if we keep doing the same things? But watching the show, I was like, yeah, it's going to be different this time. I want to see it, start it up again. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's not, I know it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so to answer my own question to you, sorry, I just want to answer it before we kind of get so far past it that it's not even worth it. In experiencing that scene, when Orpheus looks back and Eurydice says, "It's you," or "It's me," I experienced, maybe I'm trying to think about this in terms of my own life, love. I don't think there was anger. I don't think there was sadness. Maybe they both existed at some deep level, but like not as like driving thoughts. I think in that moment, there's just a moment of love. And yes, loss, but love. And that to me is the power of honestly a marriage, and of this like level of depth in relationship. It has nothing to do with how much of the person messes up. It has entirely to do with your love for them. And there have only been a few times in my life that I can like really remember like this this level of love.
Yeah. There's the song Promises. After Orpheus sings to Hades and they are allowed to leave. Or I guess they're thinking about leaving or something. Everything's changing because of the song. Orpheus and Eurydice have a moment where they sort of mention the wedding song. Orpheus says, "I have no ring for your finger. I have no banquet table to lay. I have no bed of feathers. Whatever promises I made, I can't promise you fair sky above, can't promise you kind road below, but I'll walk beside you, love, any way the wind blows," which is a reference to Eurydice's song in the beginning. And Eurydice says, "I don't need gold, don't need silver, just bread when I'm hungry, fire when I'm cold. Don't need a ring for my finger, just need a steady hand to hold. Don't promise me fair sky above, don't promise me kind road below. Just walk beside me, love, any way the wind blows."
Yeah.
In sickness or in health.
Yeah, and that's what love is.
And yet, Orpheus looks back. Do you have any other characters you want to highlight before we go
Can we
on
highlight Hades? Can we just talk about Hades? So I will say that for me, Hades is the shining point of this show. In talking with other friends who love this show, I was opened up to the Fates, who we've already discussed. But the Fates, every time they sing together. And so the idea is that they're this voice in the back of your head, but they're always harmonizing together, and there's dissonance and there's resolution, and it's like all used to like warp you to think a certain way and like pull you. I'm like, the thing I'm thinking of is when somebody's like got like a puppet with a string attached to the head. Maybe it's not pulling it all the way, but it's like, you know, you said the word nudge earlier. But I think that my wife's favorite, they were my wife's favorite. And then I also want to bring up, because we haven't spent nearly enough time talking about Persephone.
That's who I was gonna.
Okay. So we're moving towards Persephone and Hades, which I love. There is one other piece that I'm going to talk about. I want to say about Orpheus, because I didn't realize this when I was listening to it. Because when I listened to it, especially the early songs with Orpheus as he's communicating with Eurydice. Some come home with me, and I think wedding song as well. But come home with me. There are a few points where like it feels like his voice just like expands. Your name is like a melody, but like it feels like it doesn't sound like one voice. And I thought it was like some type of added, post whatever, post production sound. But in the show, the choir or the choir is that the right word? The chorus, like members of the chorus are actually like standing behind him singing those pieces. So my name is Orpheus, I'm Eurydice, and then he says, your name is like a, and then with the like a melody. There's this like a melody, and it. I don't know if I've experienced that before. Using extra voices to highlight somebody singing, like specific words within that level of like one-on-one communication. I mean, obviously great music does this all the time. It's not a unique thing. The bass and the cello and the viola will back up something the violin's doing. And then, you'll hear the bassoon come in with, whatever. But it felt like there was like an extra, it was a great way of communicating the impact that his words have through his own mastering of song and being the son of a muse.
The music is incredible. It's just, I think I listened to it about 5 times the first time just for the music. And then like the story just kind of sunk into me too after the next 5 times. But can I talk about Persephone?
Please, let's talk about Persephone.
Oh, Persephone. She's so much fun. She's coded as an alcoholic. Well, actually, more than coded. Like it's right in the lyrics.
She's more than alcoholic.
Give me some something from the fruit of the vine. It takes a lot of medicine to keep me through the wintertime when she's going back to Hadestown. But in the original cast, she's played by Amber Gray, who is also in one of my other favorite musicals, which is Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which I hope we will talk about one day.
Yes.
But she plays Persephone in this, and she gives so much, so much characterization. Amber Gray's amazing. And also the actor, I watched another recording. I don't know if Amber Gray's still on Broadway, but as Persephone, but there was another one, and she was phenomenal as well.
We had Lana Gordon just for ours, and she was amazing. Like amazing. Like Midas Hades stole the show. Like actual full body chills in the second act as she was singing.
Oh, the song that opens up, I think it just like, it's just this turning point in the musical where you realize they say a lot can happen behind closed doors when the foreman exits the factory floor. And turns out that Persephone has been running kind of like a speakeasy in Hades. And it's really wonderful. They talk about she asks them if they want like
spring flowers, autumn
leaves. What's on tap at the bar? It's like
I'm looking it up right now. Oh, the wind right here in a jar. I got the rain on tap of the bar. I got sunshine up on my shelf. Allow me to introduce myself. Brother, what's my name? My name is Our Lady of the Underground.
Yeah, Our Lady of the Upside Down. And she really steals the show right there.
In the rendition I saw of this, the actor who played Hermes, this directly ties in, was Nathan Lee Graham. Look him up. You've seen him. He's in Hitch, the movie. He's an actor you've seen. Like, he was very good as Hermes, but he didn't steal the show. Mm-hmm. It felt like I was watching an actor acting as Hermes rather than being Hermes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He didn't take away from anything. He just didn't, I just watched Aladdin live, and the actor who played the genie, there might as well not have been anybody else in the show. He was so good that just everything else paled. Like, it didn't matter. And in this Hadestown, if Hermes is that character, then it's so hard to shine as bright. And so in ours, Persephone is that much brighter because there wasn't this huge burning sun that was Hermes taking over the entire sky to begin the show.
Yeah. Well, is the thing with Hermes though, and I wanted to say this about Andre de Shields and Hermes and why I love him so much. Maybe it's a little bit out of control, but I love Andre de Shields as Hermes. Can't say it enough. But I think part of the reason is because he, as a character, he is your guide.
Yes.
And I was thinking about this while I was listening to it this past week and a half or so, is about how Hermes is kind of like having a Groundhog Day, because Hermes at the beginning, he says it's a sad song, it's a sad tale, it's a tragedy, and we're going to sing it even so. And so Hermes knows what's going to happen. He's done all of this before. And I can't help, like, when Andre de Shields is singing, or like I watched some of the recordings and saw him acting, like, maybe I'm projecting, probably a bit, but I can almost feel like Hermes knows what's going to happen. Like, he's done all of this before.
Oh yeah.
And so when that moment comes, when Orpheus looks back, it's just Hermes standing over Orpheus. And like when Andre de Shields just says, he's really quiet for a long time, just looking at Orpheus. And then he goes, and the way he says, I don't know. It just gives me so much. I just feel it. But forget Mark Twain or Dickens or whoever, Morgan Freeman. If I'm going to pick someone to narrate my life, it's going to be Andre de Shields as Hermes, because he's such a guiding presence. And,
I would pick Hades.
All right, well.
And look, there goes Eric. It's a sad song. But I derailed us. Thank you for sharing that, Hunter. I derailed us from Persephone, who we need to be focusing on.
Yeah. I remember, this is the sort of tangent that we're known for, I think. But I remember when I was in elementary school, I went to really glad I went there, a very kind of unique private school in Vermont, very small classes, but we would do a play every year. And we did, man, I can't remember. It was one that had Hades and Persephone. It was the stories of Hades and Persephone. And that's like my first memory of the myth of Hades and Persephone. And Hades just kind of takes Persephone. In the myth, Persephone doesn't have much agency. She is, Hades just takes her. I guess they don't say exactly how it happens, but he decides that he wants to have her as his wife, and he does. And so I think one of the great things about Hadestown and Persephone is that they give Persephone so much characterization and so much. They show her having power over Hades, and them having a back and forth relationship with it, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. And that's the other love story in this show, is maybe what started as a one-way relationship. Ultimately, Orpheus's song brings Hades back into the line of remembering what his relationship with Persephone looked like when it began. And there's this parallel, very overt parallel, that wasn't overt to me until I watched the show, of their relationships. I mean, it's actually sung. The song Epic, like, especially is the song about how Persephone and Hades met. And Hades didn't have words to sing when he met her. And so he just sang the sounds, the la 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 that you have so beautifully heard us both portray in this show, this episode, podcast, whatever it is we do. And it hits home for Hades in a way that nothing else does. It allows him to re-evaluate his sight of Persephone, and that kind of the show, their relationship in the show ends with, okay, we'll see what comes of this in another 6 months. Because Persephone is saying, hey, you need to give me my time. Like, the arrangement is that I spend 6 months a year in Hades with you, and the other 6 months above. And that's where the seasons come from. And I got the feeling that at some point Hades had messed up that arrangement. That at some point that had actually been the case, where it would be 6 months and 6 months. And my thinking is that when that was true, Persephone was not an alcoholic. But it was as Hades was forcing more and more control over her that she responded with the power she did have. Mm-hmm. And when she finally said no to him, that's when Eurydice was taken.
Right.
And then the show goes on. The La La La's are sung.
Yeah.
And
I think it's interesting because I usually hate love triangle stories. Kim and I were watching Dr. Zhivago because we started reading it. There's a love triangle in that. It's Dr. Zhivago, whatever. Fine movie.
Never heard of it.
Well, it's a love triangle. Well, not exactly a love triangle. It's very complicated. But I usually hate stories where it's all about, people cheating on each other and that kind of thing. I just absolutely hate it. Whether or not it's realistic, or I just don't like it. It's uncomfortable. And this sort of happens in Hadestown with Eurydice and Hades. It's not exactly in the text, but it's kind of like subtext, more or less.
It's so obvious.
Yeah. It's very clear subtext. but I didn't hate it. And I'm not sure that's partly because it's the story. I think because it's the myth. And I think it's also the way it's presented in the song, because it's not just like Eurydice is going and cheating on Orpheus. It's like, Orpheus has been ignoring Eurydice and working on his song, and also Eurydice is dying. Like,
this show does a very by the end of the show, I found myself rooting for Hades.
I could tell.
But I feel like that's what the show's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he is not a likable character. And he does things that are absolutely abysmal and atrocious. Not only toward Eurydice, because she has, I think, very little agency in the Songbird song. But also towards everybody else who, quote unquote, willingly chose to be in Hadestown. Everything in Hadestown I own.
Yeah.
But by the end, you're seeing his character develop. And you're like, oh, maybe he will change. And even though the relationship of Eurydice and Orpheus is over, in the sense of they won't ever be together, maybe the relationship of Persephone and Hades will grow or regrow. Yeah. And that's what we have to cheer for. Right? There's nothing else to cheer for.
Yeah. I think we take for granted how familiar we are with like Greek myths. Like they're in our video games, and we learn about them in school, of course, but there's also tons of young adult novels about the gods and just so much content. We know so much about the gods. And, maybe we interact with them in a way that's not dissimilar from the way that the ancient Greeks interacted with them in the way that we sort of tell stories about them and stuff. Although I think the ancient Greeks probably had a little more skin in the game than we do. But anyway, I think the musical and the myth kind of goes to show like the power of myth and the way that gods, like the Greeks, like a pantheon, are not really gods so much as they're kind of like reflections of parts of us. And that's also true for characters in a story, but I think in particular here, like Anais Mitchell does use imagery of the devil for Hades in her songs, and that's definitely an undercurrent. But Hades is not the devil. He's his own character. He's a person. He has feelings and emotions that are, he can love. Not that the devil can't love, but it's
he can love somebody that's not himself.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, when I think about Hades, I think about, the struggle of being in a relationship and forgetting what's important. Because it's easy to do, easier than you might think. but it is so important to remember. Remember what started the relationship and what's really important. And that's a struggle that Hades goes through. Where is the treasure inside of your chest? Says Orpheus.
Yeah. Can we now talk more about Hades?
Yes, yeah. We're already talking about Hades.
I know. I just wanted to be allowed to open the floodgate.
Yes.
Everybody in this show is wearing kind of Depression era style clothing, or like colored clothing, while it's kind of maybe more modern styled, I guess, but like Depression era feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then minus Persephone, who's bright greens, bright yellows, bright colors. And then from the very beginning of the show, you see Hades. And he spends most of the first act just sitting on a balcony overlooking the show. Of course, minus Hermes as well. Hermes is also dressed in a suit. Hades is wearing a double-breasted pinstripe suit that is bedazzled. So when you're watching him, the light, he actually shines. And I've been looking up pictures and videos of Patrick Page in Hadestown. And he already is fully grayed or silvered. I don't know what the right wording is. In my rendition, Matthew Patrick Quinn, who plays Hades, has not grayed as a person. And so instead, they give him a little bit of like white in his beard. At least when I saw it. And he looks terrifying. Like, actually, like I'm scared of him. And he sings with this. Let me just drop a little bit of a picture. The very last one in this grouping of pictures, Hunter. You can see what he looks like, and like when he's singing. And I was about as close as this picture was taken from him, or felt like I was. And right, he looks terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Because he just commanded the stage. And the song that you most feel that is Why We Build the Wall.
Yeah.
It's the last song in the first act. And while it was written in 2006, and that has been clearly communicated by Aeneas Mitchell, it speaks so perfectly into our political climate as a language of, I mean, I read it, I think it feels to me overtly to be saying, like, from the view of the devil, which we've already talked about how Hades is not the devil, but
he also is.
Definitely that is. He also is. From the view of the devil, why we build a wall to keep other people out. We build a wall, ultimately, because they envy the wall. And what keeps us free is this thing that we're building that we will never stop building, and this war that will forever go on. And it's so clear that that's not freedom.
Right. Well, I think the interesting thing is that I think I'm not saying it's a wrong interpretation. I think it's definitely a valid one. But also, if you think about the context of what she was writing about like the Depression when they were doing a lot of work projects and stuff to give people work, to give them wages. So in one sense, like building a wall is like, building, was it the Golden Gate Bridge or was that built during the New Deal?
I just think of FDR with all the
Hoover
national
Dam.
parks.
It wasn't that Hoover Dam. No. My history is pretty spotty. But there were work projects to help with the Depression, to give people jobs. And so that's the angle that I think where it was written from. Not that it's not a wrong interpretation of what you're saying, because I think it is too.
Well, and this is, when did the art come out? Like, what is the climate? What was meant versus what is heard can be very different.
True.
When we've had this conversation early on in our show about once art is released into the world, like who holds control over it and whose voice matters. And I've shared that my view is the original artist's voice matters as much as other views. Mm-hmm. I don't think it counts as the authoritative view even. I think even Anais Mitchell saying this does not, I'm not singing about the U.S.-Mexico border. Like I don't saying that I don't think it matters. Like in a real essence of like, what is the show communicating to the 1,500 people, 2,000 people that are seeing it each time it's portrayed, it's done. Like, what are they hearing? Mm-hmm. What is because it's, while it feels like the show doesn't feel like it's entirely set during the Depression. It has the feel that some of it is.
Don't ask why, don't ask when either.
Mm-hmm. Like if it was a language of like this entire thing is set in the 1930s, or 1940s post-war, and they're talking about a wall, like, okay, like we need to think about what it meant there. Mm-hmm. And then maybe relate it to now, but the timing's obscured, and the timing in which it was really made it big.
Yeah.
It was a very specific, it went game on Broadway in 2019.
Well, do you remember when the movie The Two Towers came out?
Mm-hmm.
And the sort of controversy about, quote unquote controversy, because it came out shortly, not too long after the Two Towers were the World Trade Center and the
okay. I think
9/11.
I know where you're going with this. Keep going.
Tolkien wrote The Two Towers in 1940, 40 something, right? When it came out like this, he had no idea what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Do you think when they were releasing the movie, do you think they have any responsibility to change the title or make a statement or?
So they actually did, not with the Two Towers, but with Return of the King. They originally planned for the tower to collapse in on itself straight down, but instead they visually changed the way that the tower fell, that the eye fell, so that it wouldn't be reminiscent of the World Trade Centers.
Interesting.
One of the things that I was hearing in what you were saying, which isn't the question you asked, is what about us watching the Two Towers today? You know, like now that we're out of that, maybe we're bad examples because that will always be in our mind of kind of we're thinking about when it came out, and because it came out in our lifetime and it was influential in both of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the best of the trilogy, best of the Lord of the Rings.
Two Towers.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Ooh, future episode coming your way. But
Fellowship.
Fellowship, interesting. Most people say Return of the King. It won the most awards.
Fellowship.
Two Towers, you're right.
I am.
Two Towers.
Fellowship.
When, let's think, I don't know, 50 years from now, when Hadestown is, let's hope it's remembered. Will it be remembered? Will that song throw up the same conversation? Maybe, maybe not. Some musicals, when they've kind of come back and like new tours, they'll change the set design. They'll modernize wardrobes. They'll sometimes even change some of the words to make it more palatable or adaptable to a modern audience. I don't know. I think this song usually, honestly, the songs that usually hit me the most in musicals and in albums are the power ballads. And this isn't really a power ballad, right? It's not.
No. And
maybe it's slightly because of the work I do that this hits home and conversations I have. I think it's also the power of Hades as a character and the intensity. Like it is, it hits me as the most intense song. I think it's without any. I think it's it adds the most intensity in the show. I think it also might be the power of the cast and the chorus in the response. Because this song ends with, we build the wall to keep us free, and it's said as a statement.
Yeah.
And then at the very, you go further down to, I don't even know which part in Act 2. There's one of the songs ends with, we're free. Like, the wall keeps us free, and it's said as a question.
Right.
And it's, again, that repetition, but completely subverting it, the statement. And this is where Hades starts. And this is where the people start without any hope. And as, they're doing what they're told to do just because that's what they're told to do it. Because they want to stay alive.
Well, here's an interpretation. A way that we might be able to marry our interpretations, not of the best Lord of the Rings movie, but of the
Lord of the Rings, 1.5. Timon and Pumbaa bring you.
Why we build the wall. So, I would like to mention our next one we're doing After the Last Border, which is a book that you recommended to me.
I'm so excited.
We're going to get into it. And this song, actually, you already touched on it a little bit. After the Last Border is about refugees. And we'll talk about it more later. But, if I could try and paraphrase our interpretations of this song, you take the interpretation more on the side that it's about building a wall to keep out the people that are going to take our work and keeping out poverty in that way. And I mentioned the interpretation that it's about work projects that keep out the enemy, which is poverty, during the Great Depression. Not necessarily about people that might come in and take actual people. But what I noticed, I was looking at the lyrics, and he says, who do we call the enemy? Right. And the company says the enemy is poverty, and the wall keeps out the enemy, and we build the wall to keep us free. And then Hades says, his next line after that is, because we have and they have not, because they want what we have got. He doesn't say who they are. He just says they. And the company says, because we have and they have not, because they want what we have got, the enemy is poverty. But the enemy is not, poverty is not a they. Like, and this is, I think, what can connect our interpretations, because like one of the things about After the Last Border is that it gives a nice history of like different attitudes in the United States on immigration and stuff. Yeah, I'm really glad I did, actually.
I think it's fascinating,
it's
but
really
I also
helpful.
know it can get really intense and confusing.
Yeah, but we'll get there. But during the Great Depression, I'm obviously not a historian, but I can imagine that like people were looking for other people to blame, and it's really easy to just say they do this, they want that, they. But who is they really? And I feel like, it was written in 2006, but like it's not like this stuff wasn't, everything that came out during the 2016 election, it wasn't new. Like it was all there. It was just kind of bubbling. And I feel like Anais Mitchell is probably very aware of that. And that's where I think it comes from. And whether it's intentional or not, I think you could say that Hades throws in because we have and they have not, without actually defining who they is, as a tool to kind of point at some nebulous they person, as a way to kind of keep his power.
Can you repeat the main piece of your argument? I'm sorry, I lost it.
My main piece is that that Hades, he is doing these work projects to keep out poverty, but he also defines a they, he defines an undefined they as kind of a scapegoat to say, to justify how vehemently he holds to the project, to the building, because whoever they are, want what we have got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so that means that this can be interpreted in multiple different times, which the whole show's about. And so both of our interpretations could be fully valid and accurate to this particular show because we're setting them in two time periods in which they and the wall look different. Mm. And so I don't know if that's as much marrying the two together as kind of giving the understanding of, and this is kind of my entire approach to questions around the wall, is the bridge. What's our mindset? Is our mindset of wall? Or is it a bridge? But you're bridging these two ideas,
right,
or these two interpretations across time, because the setting changes, the time changes, everything changes, but the story is the same. Mm-hmm. And I will say, you left out the final verse.
Yeah.
What do we have that they should want, my children, what do we have that they should want? And then their response is, what do we have that they should want? So instead of working through their whole piece, like where they repeat everything that Hades says, like there's a specific break in the expectation for what the chorus is going to sing, because they don't say, what do we have that they should want? What do we have that they should want?
Yeah.
They say, what do we have that they should want? And
We
the
have a
whole
wall
thing,
to work
the whole thing that keeps us separate from them, and the whole reason that we build the wall is so that we have the wall to work upon. We have work and they have none, and our work is never done. And like, to me, like it works towards both of our interpretations. And both of them, I think, point to the uselessness, or are arguing that the actual building of the wall is the useless endeavor.
Mm.
It doesn't do anything. In fact, it creates an us and a them, which is one of the pieces that people attribute to Martin Luther King Jr., but he got it from Martin Buber, and we read this in Letter from Birmingham Jail. Is this I-it relationship that we create that I would say we create with an us and them, which his challenge, Martin Buber is kind of writing, was to change it from I-it to I-thou, to me and you.
Right.
And that's different from us and them. You know, what does it mean to them, somebody, to other them, right? To make them less than you. And this song subverts that statement of us actually having something to protect when we build the wall. Instead, the entire thing that we are, quote unquote, protecting with the wall is our own ability to have a wall. Maybe somebody would try to say it positive, our ability to have a purpose for what to do with our time, which I would say is ultimately a useless purpose, and one that is destructive. And it's clearly destructive in this show. Right? What is it, the one thing that Orpheus does to this wall? He breaks it.
Yep.
He breaks it.
And Hades has grown so afraid that he'll lose what he owns. But what he doesn't know is that what he's defending is already gone.
This show can also be read as broken marriage, beyond repair, finding the beginning of healing.
I think that's the power of myth. And this myth in particular. This was written by some Greek at least 1,000 years ago, I think. And it's still shaping us. I don't think I realized it until we talked about it for 2 hours. Is I think just part of the reason I love it is because it is a myth. And I think that's why I love Tolkien so much too. And that's what he loved, was myth. And these stories that are timeless and that we pass down in one form or another, and we interpret them, we tell them in our own way to ourselves, and they shape us. They get at something that you can't really get at any other way.
Yeah. I just looked it up. This was written over 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
The first account we have is from 530 BC. But yes, a myth speaks then, speaks now. It speaks in multiple cultures. It speaks to the human experience, and that doesn't change. Humans aren't ultimately that much different than we were 2,500 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm curious, the last song, Raise a Cup, did they do that one after the curtain for you?
Yes. Yes.
That's what I read, how they did it.
Yes. I honestly wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I really paid attention to it in my first listens through it. And that was a really cool moment to see that brought in. It also was a really cool moment to see, and for me by that point, I fully realized that many of the actors were singing while actually playing instruments. They weren't faking it. So the actor who plays Orpheus is actually playing the guitar.
Yeah.
It is not faked.
Yeah.
And that is very challenging to do. I would expect even more so, as an actor in a musical, where you are the primary. There's another of the Fates. One of them was playing the violin in our when we were watching it, and actually playing the violin. Another one was playing the accordion, and the director of the pit was sitting playing the piano, also playing the organ, the pipe organ, the accordion, and also conducting. Sorry, I called director, conducting, and he was amazing to watch. We were sitting so close that we could actually. Melanie nudged me at one point, and I looked behind me, and there were two TVs mounted to the balcony, such that if you're in your balcony, it was below you, you couldn't see it. With him conducting while sitting on stage in the moments when he wasn't playing the piano.
Yeah.
Even though he was in the piano, he was still conducting. But actually conducting the different pieces of it. And he was so much fun to watch. So I want to give a small call out to Eric Kang. Kang. Calvin Jones was on the bass, but Eric Kang, the conductor and playing the piano and also the accordion, he played with so much joy. Actually, in the second act, they actually sing too. The pit acts as a little bit of a chorus for Our Lady of the Underground. Hunter, are you going to play us out tonight?
Yeah, I might try. I haven't actually practiced this. And like I said, I might just re-record it later to get cleaner sound, but just for the, because it's such a good song, especially for our podcast. If you look at the lyrics, it's called
We Raise Our Cups.
We Raise Our Cups. Yeah.
Duh. Okay. Duh.
I just changed the strings on my guitar.
Ah.
I hate doing strings. Like, every time I'm like, maybe I can learn to love like caring for my instrument. And I just hate it. It's just such a chore. And then it's like not in tune for a while. It's just
but the action you get from playing with new strings.
Yes.
Like, I almost never change. The only time I will ever change the strings on my bass is when one of them actively breaks, which has happened to me, but only once. I broke an E string on a bass, which is
an E string,
the thickest string on the bass.
Yeah,
broke it on Easter.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was an experience. So I had to play the rest of. It was like during church, so I had to play the rest with only the 3 higher strings. But the action you get when you change your strings, I could see how people could get addicted to it and only play with new strings.
Yeah, well, it's not worth changing the strings.
Yeah, you need to be doing it every day, and you need to be getting paid for it.
I use D'Addario XTs. I found those last quite a while, but yeah, I don't know. It's just. All right, I'm going to try and do it. We'll see. I don't know. Let's hear myself. Pour the wine and raise a cup. Drink up, brothers, you know how. And spill a drop for Orpheus, wherever he is now. Some birds sing, the sun shines bright. Our praise is not for them, but the ones who sing in the dead of night. We raise our cups to them. Wherever he is wandering, alone upon the earth, let all our singing follow him and bring him comfort. Some flowers bloom where the green grass grows. Our praise is not for them, but the ones who bloom in the bitter snow. We raise our cups to them. We raise our cups and drink them up. We raise 'em high and drink 'em dry. To Orpheus and all of us, good night, brothers, good night.
Good night.